And now, let us prepare our hearts and minds for a time of meditation. I invite you to find a comfortable position in your seats. Close your eyes if you wish, and take a few deep breaths and let go of any worries that may be on your mind.
This song is about remembering who you are, even in the toughest times. We all breathe together, preparing for meditation. Hush, my child, I heard the voice say from the dark night of my soul. Things are not as bad as they seem, and you are stronger than you know. You call on me to help you, but it's already done. Everything I am, you are. The battle has been won. You are not weak. You are not helpless. You are not fear. You are not judgment. You are whole. You are worthy. You are the way of God. The way of God. Deep in my own heart, I found strength and the courage to go on. When I faced my fears, I could see they were all just illusion. I want to make the difference. I want to be the way. Now when I want to turn and run, I hear myself say, you are not weak. You are not helpless. You are not fear. You are not judgment. You are whole. You are worthy. You are the way of God. So let's all take a deep cleansing breath together. We know that wherever we are on this plane, we can be connected by just thinking about one another, activating that connection, and breathing in that beautiful energy of God that permeates the very air we breathe. The Easterners call it prana. And every time we breathe in, we take in that energy, and every time we exhale, we surrender. We surrender our person self to our divine God self. And we know as expressions of the divine, we are not weak or helpless. We're not fearful. We're not judgmental. We take in another deep breath. We just allow that expression of the divine to come forth, to guide us, to comfort us, to be there with us through dark times and through the good times. We give thanks for the knowledge that there is only one presence and one power, that God is all there is. And if God is all there is, then God is present in every situation, every trial and every victory in our lives. We can find God there. So as we go into just a few moments of silence, take your thoughts and follow your breath deep down into your heart space. And allow that comfort of the divine to come forth for you in the very silence of our own being. So when the path before you seems too much to take, just remember who you are. Take a breath and say, you can say with me, I am not weak. I am not weak. I am not helpless. I am not helpless. I am not fear. I am not fear. I am not judgment. I am not judgment. I am whole. I am whole. I am worthy. I am the way of God. I am the way of God. I am not weak. I am not weak. I'm not helpless. I am not helpless. I am not fear. I am not fear. I am not judgment. Not judgment. I am whole. I am whole. And I am worthy. I am worthy. I am the way of God. I am the way of God. You are the way of God. The way of God. Open your eyes when it's comfortable for you. Take another deep cleansing breath together. We come together now as one mind, one body. And so it is. Amen.
And amen. Thank you, Richard.
And a women. Don't forget the women.
And a women too. Hey, Brother Mekdeci, I'm not going to go on with a long introduction of you. All I want to say is, the first time I ever arrived at Unity Village back in 1998 or something like that, it was a cold October day, as they can be in Kansas City, pre-Halloween, and once we got settled in, there was a activity in the Charles Fillmore Chapel, and who was sitting behind the piano playing his music but Reverend Richard Mekdeci, who was not a reverend at the time. I can't think of anybody in our country, perhaps maybe his partner Sue K. Riley with him, who has done more to bring positive music into the world. The formation of Empower Music and all the songs and the people that he's brought together has just moved the positive spirituality movement forward. So, Richard, thank you for your commitment to the Unity movement. Thank you for your commitment to truth. And welcome to Unity of Davis. Great to have you here. Thank you.
You're welcome. What a beautiful community. Wow, you guys are great. I love this idea of a virtual church. I mean, we still get it. I'm going to share screen here, and let's see. Hopefully we can get going. Boom. Here we go. Wait, that's not what I want you to see. Actually, this is what I want you to see. There we go. Radical purpose, how your life matters. And I know this week has been an emotional one for most of us. Many of you are happy and hopeful, while many of you are also feeling great disappointment and a sense of nihilism, like nothing we do matters. But whichever one of those you are, it's important to know that we are still all connected at a deep energetic level, that every word you say, every action you take can have repercussions that can literally alter the course of history across time. And I'll use an example of that in just a few moments. But first, I want to start with this story. It goes back to 1963, where there was a mathematician and a meteorologist named Edward Lorenz. And he presented his doctoral thesis to the New York Academy of Science. His theory was that very small changes in initial conditions could produce large changes in long-term outcomes. And he made this discovery while trying to predict the weather. He was a meteorologist and a mathematician, and he called it the chaos theory. And the reason he called it that was because there's really no way to predict what those long-term outcomes would be past a certain amount of time. You have a little change here, and it produces an outcome, and then that outcome produces an outcome, and that outcome produces an outcome, and at some point it becomes impossible to predict what those outcomes would be. And he said, this is what he said at his thesis: one flap of a seagull's wings would be enough to alter the course of weather forever. And if that sounds familiar, if it has a familiar ring to it, it's because it was eventually to be known as the butterfly effect. I'm going to try to figure out how to change my... Oh, there we go. So it was in the mid-90s, although Lorenz was laughed out of the place, okay, for saying this, the theory was interesting enough that it stuck around and it started seeping into pop culture, into science fiction movies, comic books, urban legends. But then in the mid-90s, Lorenz was vindicated when scientists discovered the Higgs boson, and that's the God particle that we've known as the God particle. And he was giving his lecture in Texas, and he did not have a title for his lecture, but one of his colleagues concocted this little title. Does the flap of a butterfly wings in Brazil could start a tornado in Texas? And of course, that little iteration became the most popular and has stuck pretty much as the butterfly effect. So after they discovered the God particle, and this is the most elemental particle there is. It's, in layman's terms, the God particle, the boson particle, is what atoms and electrons are made of. That's how small and that's how much it permeates everything we do. And this discovery confirmed that we are all made out of the same stuff. And if we're made out of the same stuff, we're connected on an energetic level, not just to one another, but to everything on the planet. And if we're all connected energetically, then anything we do has some kind of effect on the whole. So this discovery led them to the conclusion that, yeah, this crazy butterfly theory may have something to it. So lo and behold, in the mid-90s, our little butterfly effect became an official law. Just like the law of gravity or the law of aerodynamics, the butterfly effect is now, the butterfly effect is now the law of sensitive dependence upon initial conditions. And it's an official scientific law now. And this law is set into effect whenever any form of matter is moved. Think about that. Whenever any form of matter is moved, the law of sensitive dependence upon initial conditions is in effect. And so anytime a butterfly flaps its wings, every time we blink, so like gravity, this law is constantly in effect, connecting us in ways too complex to comprehend. And it verifies the fact that everything and anything we do could have ripples out to the other side of the world and even across time, just like our humble butterfly. So I'm going to tell you a little story as an example. I don't know if any of you, if any of you, have heard of a man named Norman Borlaug. Probably not, because Norman Borlaug won the Nobel Peace Prize for botany in 1970. And he was in his 90s at the time. But a few years before that, back in the 40s, he developed a way to hybridize high-yield, disease-resistant corn and wheat for arid climates. So think about that. High-yield, disease-resistant corn for wheat in arid climates, and making it possible to grow wheat and corn where it was never possible to grow those crops before. And it was calculated that this one discovery had saved more than 2 billion people from famine, 2 billion and counting, because that was back in the 90s. Now, if we extrapolate that forward, I guess a conservative estimate might be that his little discovery has saved at least 5 billion lives and counting. Agreed? So that is worth a Nobel Peace Prize for sure. But then some argued that it is really a man named Henry Wallace who should have gotten that Nobel Prize, because he was the former Secretary of Agriculture who also served one term as vice president under Franklin Roosevelt. And it was Vice President Henry Wallace who used his power to fund a lab in Mexico for the sole purpose of hybridizing high-yield, disease-resistant corn and wheat for arid climates. So it was Henry Wallace who recognized the need for this and who believed it could be done. And he's the one who hired Norman Borlaug to head up the lab. So perhaps Henry Wallace should have been credited with saving those 5 billion lives and counting. Now, some said, come on. Well, in that case, the credit should be given to George Washington Carver. That's right, the peanut guy. Carver was such a brilliant student that at age 19, he was just a sophomore in college. His botany professor asked if his little 6-year-old son could follow George around on his botany expeditions and learn from him. So it was from hanging out with young George Washington Carver that a young Henry Wallace received his loves for plants and the good they could do in the world, and that inspired him to use his power as vice president to fund a lab in Mexico, where Norman Borlaug made his discovery. So maybe beside the 266 things he developed from a peanut, we should also add to George Washington Carver's resume, responsible for saving 5 billion lives and counting. But wait, there's more. Perhaps the credit for those 5 billion lives and counting should go to a farmer from Diamond, Missouri named Moses. Moses, who at the end of the Civil War risked his life to rescue the baby of one of his former slaves from a band of racist marauders. And Moses rode 3 days into the lair of these killers and had to trade his horse for the child and walk back in the freezing cold to deliver the baby. And you know where this is going? That's right, this baby was George Washington Carver. So, who only 19 years later, after that, would inspire a 6-year-old boy named Henry Wallace, who would grow up to be vice president and use his power to fund a laboratory in Mexico that made it possible for Norman Borlaug to make his discovery that was saving over 5 billion lives from famine and counting. I always like to add and counting, maybe 6 or 7 by now. So that's a great story to just demonstrate how one action can have repercussions over years and years. If we apply this butterfly effect to our own lives, we can start to realize that each one of us could be a link in the chain of a story just like that one, without even knowing it. Moses didn't know he was saving that baby, that saving that baby would result in 5 billion lives being saved 100 years later. How could he? But in a universe that's so connected and interdependent, we have to consider that everything we do can have that kind of influence in the world around us. It's a very empowering thought to know. Now, I think we've all seen the holiday classic, It's a Wonderful Life, and it's coming into the holiday season, and I love to watch that movie every year. Now, this movie, It's a Wonderful Life, demonstrated the butterfly effect 40 years before Edward Lorenz presented it to the New York Academy of Science. You know, James Stewart's character, George Bailey, had the amazing blessing of being able to see how his life matters. He was shown how his life matters. He was shown by his angel Clarence what Bedford Falls would be like if he'd never been born. So I'd like to play for you the famous cemetery scene.
Sure this is Bailey Park?
No, I'm not sure of anything anymore.
Oops, sorry. Dang it. I was gonna...
All I know is this should be Bailey Park. But where are the houses?
You went here to build them. Your brother, Harry Bailey, broke through the ice and was drowned at the age of 9.
That's a lie. Harry Bailey went to war. He got the Congressional Medal of Honor. He saved the lives of every man on that transport.
Every man on that transport died. Harry wasn't there to save them because you weren't there to save Harry. You see, George, you really had a wonderful life.
Isn't that great? You see, George Bailey really got to see how his life mattered. And if we're fortunate, the universe may send us a George Bailey moment. Has anyone ever come up to you? I know it's probably happened to Reverend Rich, and thanked you for something you said to them like years ago that changed their lives and had this huge impact on them, and you had like no recollection of the conversation or what you said, and you're looking at them just like nodding and going, who is this person? You know? And they're just talking away. Do you remember when we were discussing gardening and you told me how to balance my pH in the soil? My entire garden blossomed the year I became hooked on gardening, and I started growing vegetables and for my neighbors and eventually my church. And now my church donates my vegetables to a homeless shelter that feeds 100 people a week with my vegetables. Thank you so much. And you're going, wow, that short conversation I had about pH balance ended up, feeding hundreds of people, homeless people, 2 years later. And you never really know how many times that has happened. How many short conversations you've had with people that started a chain of events that ended up making a positive impact in the world. Every so often, someone might come up to me and say, man, your song getting better every minute really got me through my cancer journey. Or goodbye, old friend, really helped me stop smoking. I don't know, Richard knows Reverend E.J. Niles, one of the sweetest professors at Unity Institute. She said that, she told me that when she lost her husband, my song, Letting Go of Holding On, got her through her grieving. See, those are George Bailey moments for me. Maybe not as profound as saving 5 billion lives and counting, but then again, I don't know what effect my music may be having in the world. Another example would be Rosa Parks. She was the first woman and the only person never to be elected to an office, never to serve in the military, but she was laid in honor at the U.S. Capitol Rotunda when she died. And there's a statue of her in the Capitol Statuary Room. It's a statue of her sitting on a seat. I imagine it's a bus seat. And all she did was refuse to give her seat up to a white man on a bus one day. She was tired and she just had enough. And that simple action sparked a movement that's still influencing our lives today. So I wonder if she knew what an impact that little action would have on the world. Author Andy Andrews, he wrote this little bathroom book called The Butterfly Effect. And that's where I got the Norman Borlaug story. And he says that there are generations yet unborn whose very lives will be shifted and shaped by the moves you make and the actions you take today and tomorrow and the next day and the next. So how do we live with this amazing, awesome responsibility? Well, this is where radical purpose comes in. On another way we could say equal purpose. So this is how that works. If you're like me, you may find yourself consciously or unconsciously categorizing your actions and interactions by level of importance. right? So I might consider a visit with a family member more important than a visit with a friend. Or I might consider a conversation with my therapist higher priority than, say, a conversation with my butcher. I don't have a butcher, by the way. Or a round of golf, medium importance versus 30 minutes with a sick friend, very important. And we tend to treat those things differently according to how high up on the importance scale they are. But radical purpose asks us, what if we treated them all the same? As if everything you did or said had the same potential to change lives or alter history. That's where radical purpose comes in. A 1-minute conversation with a grocery store clerk at a checkout line could end up having as great an impact on the world as a talk I give at an international peace summit. Surely I would rate speaking for an international peace summit more important, right, in a conversation with a stranger? But what if I treated them both as equally important? How would that have changed the conversation? So all the examples you hear are positive ones, right? But we could just as easily start a chain of events that may have devastating effects out into the world over time. So here are 4 ways to practice radical purpose in your life. Okay, number 1 is to be present. Whoever you're speaking to, whatever you're doing, do it consciously. This is called mindfulness too. In a lot of circles, do it mindfully. When you're fully present, you respond from your divine center in that moment instead of reacting from the experiences you've had in the past. So bringing yourself into the now moment and being totally present in whatever you do and say. Number 2, pay attention. Notice how your words and actions are affecting those around you. Be open to what truly is being asked of you in that moment. Pay attention to what's coming through you. Pay attention. Notice what you're noticing. Number 3, it's always good to set an intention. Set an intention. Make a decision that everything you do with kindness, compassion, love, non-judgment. Set a positive intention for every action and word you put out there. And finally, stay on purpose. Stay on purpose. Remember that nothing you do is insignificant, and anything you do could have far-reaching effects out in the world and across time. Just take a look around on the screen at all these folks, all these friends of yours. No one here or out there is any less equipped or qualified more than Gandhi, King, Buddha, or Jesus to alter the course of history, to heal lives, to feed the hungry, to house the homeless, to cure the sick, or inspire greatness in young minds like George Washington Carver did. You may have already done this without even knowing it. That's the beauty of it. We don't know what our words and actions are doing. So we be present, we pay attention, we set our intention, and we stay on purpose. Our old friend, Mr. Albert Einstein, he echoes this sentiment. He said, everything we do will eventually affect the universe, so do it on purpose. Great, huh? I thought I'd have fun with this, so I went to AI, and I put this quote into AI, and this is what came back on AI. It says, this quote is often attributed to Albert Einstein. It captures the idea. Do I have this on? Yes. So this is what AI said about that quote. Attributed to Albert Einstein, it captures the idea that our actions, no matter how small, have a ripple effect into the universe. So we should be mindful and intentional about the choices we make because they contribute to the larger cosmic tapestry. Right on, AI, right? Isn't that right on? And this is the same guy that Albert Einstein also said, there are only 2 ways to live your life. This one. One is if nothing's a miracle, and the other is if everything's a miracle. And what I'm saying today is there are only 2 ways to live your life. One is though nothing I do matters, or the other way as if everything I do matters. Now, which one of those 2 calls you to a higher level of living. So remember, the law of sensitive dependence upon initial conditions. Let's say that together. The law of sensitive dependence upon initial conditions, the good old butterfly effect. It's constantly in our life, constantly working, showing how your life matters and how we're all so connected, like links in this unlimited number of chains. I'm gonna close with this short, light-hearted video that wraps it all up for us. It's called "How a Butterfly Destroyed My Neighbor's Roof." Let's watch this. Don't you love that? I love the look on his face when the boat crashes through his roof. So I can stop to share now. That was that. So be mindful of what you say and do. Just to are you guys seeing that? I don't want you to see that. Stop share. Here we go. I'm back. Be mindful of what you say and do. Because yes, your voice matters. Your words matter. Your actions matter. Your life matters. After all, it's the law. It's a law. We can't get away from it. So especially in these times where we're worried about what's going to happen, maybe in the future, know that whatever you do, you can contribute by your actions. Just be very intentional about everything you say, and let it send your words and your actions out into the world as little seeds. You never know what they might come back as, but then again, you may just have a George Bailey moment. So we're having Thanksgiving this month shortly, and this is the time when we put our attitude of gratitude on. So try to remember to give thanks for at least one thing each day between now and Turkey Day. And I'm going to leave you with this song that y'all can sing along with. In fact, your part is this. I've got an attitude, I've got an attitude, I've got an attitude of gratitude. All right, sing along with me. I've got an attitude, I've got an attitude, I've got an attitude of gratitude. I thank the universe for each new day, whether it's sunny or it's pouring rain. In any situation, time or place, my grateful heart creates a state of grace. Yeah, 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 I got an attitude, I've got an attitude, I've got an attitude of gratitude. Wrongness taught me how to praise the light. Wrongness makes me hunger for what's right. Now there's not anywhere where I can't see heaven's blessings pouring down on me. Yeah, yeah, yeah. 'Cause I've got an attitude, I've got an attitude, I've got an attitude of gratitude. When Jesus fed that hungry multitude, he did it with a grateful attitude. Although it looked like there was not enough, he thanked his Father for abundant love. Can you say yeah? Say yeah. Say yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I got an attitude. I've got an attitude. I've got an attitude of gratitude. You know, I used to cry deliverance. And I'd send desperate pleas to the heavens. Oh, but it wasn't until I gave up and got still I could see all the gifts I'd been given. Yeah. And now I've got an attitude, I've got an attitude, I've got an attitude of gratitude. One more time together, let's hear it. I've got an attitude, I've got an attitude, I've got an attitude of gratitude. I've got an attitude of gratitude. Say thank you, God, everybody. Woo! I've had a great time with you all this morning. I hope I come back soon. Thank you.